Welcome to this video where we are going to be revising Prejudice and Discrimination relevant for our AQA GCSE Religious Studies Specification A, the new course, and we are looking at Theme F, Religion, Human Rights and Social Justice. This table will help you understand what the four different types of discrimination is that you need to know for your exam. So if you have a look, we'll start with the first one, which is sexuality. And the things you need to know is you need to know what it means, you need to have an example of the discrimination, and you also need to know what the religious teachings about this are. So let's begin with sexuality. Well, what does it mean? Well, sexuality, let's have a look here. So it means this is the prejudice on the basis of someone's sexuality. And an example of that, of course, is homophobia. And religious people who are gay may face discrimination from their community if they enter into a same-sex marriage. So this is very good. So you understand the type of the prejudice that it is. It's based on someone's sexuality. In other words, feeling bad about somebody because of their sexuality. And an example of that discrimination is, as I put there, religious people who may face discrimination for their community they would enter into a same-sex marriage. Well, what are religious teachings about this? Well, we have some religious teachings that's good. In Buddhism, it says here, the Dalai Lama says to always think compassion. And in Hinduism, we know that hurting someone can lead to bad karma, which could, of course, in the Hindu thought, it might mean that it might affect one's future reincarnation. So that is something I think is important to bear in mind. Well, let's move on. Let's go to disability, because you've got to understand that as well. Disability, so we're thinking, well, what does it mean? What does disability mean? And let's have a look. Well, a disability is either a physical or mental issue that a person may have, which has a significant impact upon someone's life. A physical example could, for example, be wearing glasses, or if you like, being in a wheelchair. A mental disability could perhaps, having a mental illness which might affect one's daily life. It's usually a long-term issue which has a significant impact on the day-to-day life of a person. But very sadly, it does lead to discrimination in some cases, and it's good to know an example of that, which would be, for example, a public library which does not allow for wheelchair access. It's clearly an example of discrimination because a public library should be allowed to be available for entrance for people who are in a wheelchair. Well, what are the religious teachings about this? Well, I think it's important, if we look at Islam, that the 5 pillars apply to all Muslims, whether they're disabled or not. There's no distinction in Islam about whether someone is disabled or not, whether the 5 pillars apply to them. They do apply to everyone in all circumstances. And in Christianity and in Judaism, the Bible teaches that God created everyone equally. It's an important religious teaching that's relevant in Christianity and Judaism, and therefore, if we're thinking about disability discrimination, it does go against those religious teachings. And remember, if you're looking at what I'm doing here, you can see on the screen these passages in Buddhism and Hinduism could be applied not only in sexuality but also in disability. Well, let's move on to the next one. I've got one here which is gender prejudice. Now, gender prejudice is the discrimination on the basis of someone's gender. Now, this could be turning someone down, a woman down, because simply she's a woman, not because of any strength or merit. That is an example of gender prejudice, and in many cases that's illegal in the UK. Now, if we have a look at an example of discrimination, well, women not being allowed to vote in the past, which is true. Women haven't always had the vote, but of course it's an example of gender prejudice. And women being paid less than a man for the same job. Well, that unfortunately does happen today, but it is an example of discrimination on the basis of gender prejudice. Well, let's have a look at what religious teachings are about that. Well, in Christianity is a very famous one here, which is actually you can use in many points in your exam. It says, Paul says, there is neither male nor female, for we are all equal in Christ Jesus. There's a little bit more to that quote, but I'm sort of summarizing that quote, which is specific for gender prejudice. It's actually from Galatians 3:28. You can have a look it up if you want. And Sikhism says, in Sikhism, those who love God love everyone. So in other words, it must refer to men and women. So let's go to the last type of discrimination, which is racism. What does it mean? Well, racism is the belief that the colour of a person's skin or their race makes a person less valuable than another. Very sadly, this is prevalent in our world today, in many parts of the world, and it's something that religious people usually need to fight against. Well, let's see an example of that discrimination. Well, Rosa Parks, hopefully you would have studied that, was not allowed to sit in the white-only seats on a bus, and actually, through her bravery, it actually made to a change in society in the United States of America, and particularly bringing civil rights. In a way, Rosa Parks is one of the great heroes. I would suggest you Google Rosa Parks' story if you haven't had a chance to do that already. But I'll give another example, which is someone not being given a job because of their race, because this is indeed illegal, but it is sadly an example of discrimination which does happen from time to time. You might have heard of things such as the KKK, who are racist groups who are racist towards people who are not like them, and fascist groups today, which sadly are increasing around the world. And these are examples of people who practice racial discrimination. Well, religious teachings are very strongly against this. And I'll give you an example from Judaism, which teaches that Jews should welcome and not persecute strangers. So it's very much relevant to racism here. And also in Christianity, the story of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus teaches a parable where actually the hero was a Samaritan, and thereby teaching that it shows that all races are important and that they should not be discriminated about. Well, I hope this has helped your learning for today. Do feel free to leave any comments about this video. If you like this video, do like it, and do let me know if there's any more content of this course that you would like me to teach and share with you. Goodbye. See you soon. This is the Revs class.